Okay.
Just a reminder, y'all have a paper that's due Friday. It's possible it's somebody in my advisory. Okay, let's rock. This is the second time we're visiting the Barbary States, which was a series of kingdoms. Does anyone recall what they were doing? That's right, piracy. They called it taxes because in their mind, they had a legitimate claim to control of the Mediterranean. So they taxed any foreign ship going through. They called it a tribute. So the tribute was the tax. Why are you on your phone? So, for the most part, countries paid it. Cheaper to pay it than to risk war and the cost of the war and all that. And so they just simply paid it, including the U.S., by the way, until Jefferson was president. And remember, Jefferson is a conservative. He wants to shrink the size of the U.S. government. He wants to reduce the federal footprint, so to speak. And so when the Barbary States, the capital was Tripoli, which is today the capital of Libya, when they demanded a higher tax, in essence, they raised the tax. And it's a tax on foreign ships. It's a tariff. In their mind, they're doing the same thing the U.S. was doing when it taxed foreign goods coming into the U.S. It's just they were a little bit more aggressive, and they were taxing what was widely seen as an international body of water. You can't do that. You can't just claim a body of water and say, yeah, we're going to tax any boat that goes through here. But that's what they were doing. And so when they demanded a higher tax one year when Jefferson was president, we said, no, we're not going to pay it. And we sent the Marines. And the Marines attacked and invaded successfully the capital, Tripoli. This is not the most well-known war ever, but this is the Barbary War. It would happen during Jefferson's presidency, so let's see, somewhere between 1801 and 1809. I'm not exactly even sure when it happened, but somewhere in there, Jefferson's presidency. If you're looking like in like 1801 to 1809, don't you mean 1800 to 1804? No, because he was elected in 1800, which means he becomes president in 1801, and he stays president until the next person takes over. Madison was elected in 1808, becomes president in 1809. Yes? Yes, dear.
So for that November rule, on like when the
First Tuesday after the first Monday of November.
did they like have that?
They did. No, they changed it. I can't remember when they changed it, but that's right. So you understand that election day is this Tuesday. It is the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November. Any of you get to vote in this election? Nobody is 18. Oh, sorry. Okay. Anyway, a successful foray into foreign affairs. This is the Marines going over there to fight, wage a war. Previously, had the U.S. fought wars? Of course. But in the U.S., we fought wars. We fought the Revolutionary War here. We fought the War of 1812 here, although we haven't fought the War of 1812 yet. So that's not true. But here's an example of the U.S. sending soldiers over there. And of course, throughout our history, we would end up doing that a lot, sending soldiers over there. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Cold War, all that stuff. Okay. By the way, if you're thinking about this a little bit, which test would this set of notes be on? There are always going to be 3 objective tests, and they always are about the same things. Which one would this be on? Well, very good. The foreign one, America in the world, right? There's always going to be a test on America, the relationship between the federal government and state governments, liberal conservative. There will always be a second test on examples of the US granting liberty / taking liberty away. Are we a country that grants rights to women and blacks, or are we the country that reduces immigration during and after World War I? Right? And of course, we're both, but there will always be a test focusing on that. And then there will always be a test on foreign affairs. This is clearly the foreign affairs one. It'd be really helpful if instead of, well, the reason I always have the 3 color thing is to make sure that I've addressed the 3 exams somehow. It'd be really helpful if I like told you all the time which one, but I'm not gonna. Okay, let's keep going. The theme today is sort of foreign affairs. You'll recall that the United States ended right here with the Mississippi River. This chunk of land is known as what? It's called Louisiana. It is not called the Louisiana Purchase. The Louisiana Purchase describes the financial transaction where the U.S. acquired it. It's not called the Louisiana Purchase. It's called Louisiana, named after Ziana. No, Louis, named after Louis, King Louis of France. King Louis the 14th of France. Okay. Who's the ruler at the time when the U.S. purchased this chunk of land? Anyone know? It's an ice cream. Napoleon. That's right. Who is not a king. He's the guy. That's right. He's a dictator in every sense of the word. He deposed the people that deposed the people that deposed the people that deposed the king. Right? The chaos of the French Revolution led Napoleon to say, all right, that's enough. And so he's the ruler of France. And he wants to recreate the greatness of the French Empire. Right? At one point, do you remember the map I showed you where actually most of North America was French? I mean, it was Canada. No one lives in Canada, but still, it was French. And he wanted to recreate New France. And so he's going to reconquer land that's already his in the first place, but he's gonna repopulate it. It's gonna be a thing again. It's gonna be more than simply that plot of land that you guys own up north. And you'll build a cabin there. Sure you will. That's what's going on here, right? They got the land. They just need to build a cabin now. And it all starts with the island of Haiti, which is right about there. The French own this red half of this island, which, by the way, that's the island Columbus landed on. That's Hispaniola. That's where he met those poor Indians. There, okay? At this time, right around 1800, half of it's owned by France. But it's not really under French control. It's under local control. Right? The natives live there, and descendants of slaves that have since decided to rebel and become independent. Well, he's gonna reconquer Haiti, send thousands of French soldiers there, which is again right here, and then from there he's gonna launch an invasion and reconquer this land and make it part of New France. Yes.
So was it just local in Haiti?
I don't know about the Dominican Republic.
Or is it like the whole Louisiana? Like
What?
the French is the French in control of like all of Louisiana, or just
Well, they're in control in that they're the owners of it. They have the piece of paper that says it's theirs. But Napoleon says, no, let's go actually control it. Let's populate it. Let's hunt there. Let's mine the resources there. Let's make it ours. In fact, as well as in treaty. You understand? Okay. So they're going to launch an attack, reconquer what is theirs already, Haiti, and then from there, launch an invasion and reconquer Louisiana and make it part of the new French Empire. Well, it didn't even get off the ground because the French lost the war against the mighty Haitians. Brutal war, by the way. Vicious. Haiti as a result, becomes the second nation in the Western Hemisphere to win independence from a European power. Well, what's the first? We are, right? We're the first. We win independence from Britain in 1783. Haiti becomes the second. It's just amazing the different paths those two countries have gone on since then. We are today the world's most powerful military country, the world's richest country, the world's most influential country. They're not. They are every year one of the 4 or 5 poorest countries on earth. And I'm not blaming them. They've gone through an awful history, but they do win their independence, and which, by the way, concerned us greatly because a lot of the island was slaves, and now they're not slaves anymore. And so, does the U.S. favor Haitian independence? Well, we're in a bit of a pickle here because yes, we favor the idea that countries in the Western Hemisphere should rid themselves of European rule. So hooray for that. And yet, gee, if the slaves in Haiti aren't slaves anymore, then what are slaves in the US gonna start thinking? So we're in a bit of a pickle here. Anyway, as soon as Napoleon loses the attempt to gain control of Haiti, he gives up on New France. So he sells it. He's gonna sell it. And initially, at this time, the French owned New Orleans. They won it in a war against Spain. So now they're the owners of New Orleans. And initially, Napoleon goes to Jefferson and says, hey, do you want to buy New Orleans? Actually, it's the other way around. Jefferson approached Napoleon and said, can we buy New Orleans? And Napoleon said, why stop there? Why don't you just buy the whole thing? Buy New Orleans and we'll throw in the rest for free, right? And remember, at that time, they had no idea what this was. They thought they called it the Great American Desert. They thought it was just flyover country, which, by the way, Nebraska. Did anyone hear what is Nebraska's new state motto? This is Nebraska's new state motto. They came out with it this weekend. This past weekend. Their new state motto, Nebraska, ... It's not for everyone. Wow! Let's go! Anyway, we bought it. Okay, so Napoleon's plan was to create New France. It did not work. The George Washington of Haiti is that guy. His name is Toussaint Louverture, former slave who inspires. We're fighting for our freedom. We're fighting for our people. You can accomplish a lot when you're motivated. Have you what? I don't know if we've brought his name up. No.
I recognize the love.
Maybe you saw it in a
Yeah.
Okay. French name, by the way. Right? The French offered to purchase, to sell all of Louisiana, which in effect would double the size of the nation. Here is one, by the way, one of the differences between this thing called the United States and this thing called America. The United States, after we purchased Louisiana, after the country purchased Louisiana, where did the United States end? At the Mississippi River. But America went to this new strange border because the United States is the 50 states. There's this thing called America, which is the 50 states plus the Virgin Islands, Guam, all our embassies, any other American territory. That's America. The United States is the 50 states. Fun little fact. So anyway, again, what would happen to this? Would these become states? Would people populate the area? Again, they thought it was nothing. They didn't know what was out there. And when you buy something, I mean, you don't buy a car and then take it for a test drive. You kick the tires, by the way, rule of thumb. Anytime you are about to buy a car, kick the tires. The owner of the car will be like, this person knows what they're doing. Just kick the tires. Open the hood, look at the engine, pretend you know what you're doing. Shake some wires. Try and find the battery. Say, yeah, that's a battery right over there, I think. Make them look like you know what you're doing. The price will go down. Okay. The question that I have for you is, where did Jefferson get the authority to purchase land? This was not a treaty. The U.S. Congress did not authorize this. This is Jefferson doing it on his own. Where does it say that he can do that in the Constitution? And of course, the answer is it doesn't. So Jefferson, being a conservative, refused to do this, right? No. He violated his own principles again. He did not think he had permission to do what he did, which makes no sense, but he did it anyway because it was too good of a deal. It's just too good. He had to have it, even though it violated his own principles. Okay?
So like nobody stopped him though? Or-
Well, it's kind of like no one minded. You know, other conservatives are like, I don't know if you can do that. Yeah, go ahead. That's great. All right. I would invite you to consider that the U.S. does this all the time. You know, one of the things that the Trump administration accomplished was tax cuts, which increases our debt. But what American is going to say, no, don't you cut my taxes. Here you go, the debt. No, we act selfishly, and this is just human. Okay, so then, by the way, about the kicking the tires thing, after we bought it, then we investigated it. Like, what did we just buy? And so Jefferson sent out teams. The one you've heard of is Lewis and Clark, but there were others. It's just that Lewis and Clark did something, they wrote about it. And so you hear about that. Same thing with Paul Revere. Paul Revere was not the only one who got on his horse and rode out saying the British are coming, the British are coming. But Paul Revere had something the other ones didn't have, an education. He wrote about it, and so we learn about it. Same thing here, Lewis and Clark. And I don't know about you, but when I was young, I thought Lewis and Clark and then that Indian chick, and then she was knocked up, so it was the four of them on a canoe. No. It was Lewis and Clark, Sacagawea, her kid, and about 100 soldiers. This was Columbus 2.0. This was a major expedition. This was the U.S. launching a spaceship to go to the moon. This was a paid for military exploration. What did we just buy? And it took 3 years. Lewis and Clark and the other people that I mentioned made it all the way to the end of the United States, which is right about here. This is St. Louis. And then from there, explored and mapped and met natives. And it took 3 years.
How do you spell Sacagawea?
S-A Kajawea. I don't know. They spent an entire winter in North Dakota. Smart. Yeah, where should we spend the winter? How about North Dakota? Nice. Good idea. And they get all the press because they actually made it to the Pacific Ocean. Other explorers did not. There was another explorer who explored the, right, let's go back to this. So here's Lewis and Clark exploring basically the northern part. There was another explorer who explored the southern part. And actually, you've heard of this guy. Any of you been to Colorado? Did you go to Pikes Peak? Zebulon Pike was the guy that led the southern expedition. He didn't make it to the Pacific Ocean, but he's known sort of infamously for reaching Colorado, looking at the mountain that would be named after him and saying, that is the tallest mountain on earth. No one will ever climb it. Well, fun little facts about that. It's not the tallest mountain on earth. It's not the tallest mountain in the US. It's not the tallest mountain in Colorado. It's not even in the top 10. It's a tall mountain. It's known as a 14er. It's 14,000 feet, barely. But there are many other mountains much taller than it, and now you can ride a train straight up. Anyway, so Zebulon Pike is down here. So again, the purpose of this is to map out what we just purchased, and by and large, the U.S., this was generally seen as a positive act. The purchase of Louisiana Territory was seen as a positive thing. And this continues this trend that I hinted at before. Do you remember when George Washington was in command of the military during the Revolutionary War? What did they call that army? They did not call it the American Army. They did not. They called it the Continental Army. Even when we were just starting our venture to independence, there was this back of the mind belief that someday America would be a continental nation. Already the idea of westward expansion exists. And here is the second phase of that. Let's buy land. Let's keep going. Let's expand. It's going to happen. Let's go get it. And here's a step in that direction. Hey, Christine. Let's keep going. At this time, Napoleon is in control, as you know, and as you know, Britain had invaded France to depose of Napoleon and put back on the throne the French monarch, which is weird, but the British had selfish reasons. In the top 10 battles of world history, you are American history students, and so you think the Civil War is a big thing, and it was. It's a big thing in American history. But maybe Gettysburg might make the top 20 as far as most important battles in world history. But you're looking at one of the top 2 or 3 right now, the Battle of Trafalgar, which was a naval battle. And remember back then, naval vessels had cannons sticking out the sides. And so if my boat is attacking your boat, the thing you want to do is turn your boat so that the side of the boat is facing your enemy so you can shoot your cannons. So this is what would happen. Now we're shooting at each other. So the key would be to get in front of or behind your enemy so that you could shoot him, but he could not shoot you. So, naval battles look like, like that, okay? But anyway, here's a huge naval battle, the British taking on the French and the Spanish, and here is another big, this is a land battle. So again, the British and the French are fighting a series of battle, and no, you're not going to be held accountable to know what happened at these battles. The point was that it affected the U.S. because we're trading with both. We're trading with both Britain and France, and who doesn't want us to trade with France? Britain. Who doesn't want us to trade with Britain? France. So what they do with American boats heading towards the other, sometimes sinking it, confiscating it, it affected us that way. It's not like American boats are heading over here, although some were. Remember, we were sending boats through the Mediterranean. Mostly we were sending boats to this region right there, the Caribbean, owned by the British and the French. And so the British would stop our boats heading to French territory, and the French would stop American boats headed to British territory. Plus, they're fighting over here. This is the Battle of Austerlitz. Somewhere in here is a battle, a really big battle that determined the outcome of this war, which I believe is called what is this war called? They're called the Napoleonic Wars, a series of wars over the course of years. This is how we responded. So again, the British are fighting the French, and it is drawing in other European powers. Even back then, Russia was an incredibly large empire. The powers were the British and the French. And we responded with 3 laws that weren't passed at the same time. They were passed one after the other to replace the previous one. There's a reason. The first one was called the Embargo Act. And this, at first, made sense to us. What the U.S. said was, all right, fine, we won't trade with either of you. So think about that. You're in line, you go to lunch, and so you want to buy some lunch, and every day the bully comes and turns you upside down, shakes the money out of your pockets, and so you don't have that money anymore, which is in essence what the British and the French were doing with us. And so our solution was, fine, I just won't bring money anymore. Ha! Problem solved?
No,
Why not? They're not bullying you anymore.
we still don't get food.
I'm hungry. I'm still hungry. So we thought that didn't last. So it was replaced by something called the Non-Intercourse Act, which basically said, okay, just Britain and France. The Embargo Act said we're not trading with anybody. The Non-Intercourse Act said we're not trading with Britain and France. But again, that was sort of self-defeating. So finally, a third law was called the Mason Act. Can you finish that sentence? If either pledged to leave us alone, we'll trade with them. Exactly right. And we will not trade with the other. Now, I think you know something about U.S. history. I think you know what's in the near future. I'll just give you a clue. This was passed right around 1811. Okay? So think about sequence. Yes? Very good. And who did we fight the War of 1812 against? Britain. No, just Britain. Just Britain. Which means, can you figure out? We resumed trade with France. The French were the first to agree. Okay, we'll leave your boats alone. The British did not make that agreement.
So then they're just gonna stop them going to France again. So
That's right.
What's the point of this?
Okay, very good. I'm glad you recognize that. The irony is that the French agreed to leave our boats alone that were going to Britain, but the British kept attacking our boats going to France, which means they weren't going to France, and we stopped trading with Britain.
So it's the same problem.
Well, exactly. Nothing solved necessarily, but right, it leads to war. Okay, let's keep going here. I guess not. What? Oh, that was quick. Oh, good. I thought there would be a lot, but not too bad. The end. Okay, nice chunk of time. There's a kid. Are there 2 kids due yet?
One.
Nope, there's still 1, but 2 per week is coming. So that's in your little world. You've got a Lexington paper that is in your world that's due Friday. Any questions?
What time?
Midnight? I think that's what we said.
Midnight?
On Friday.
Friday night?
Yes, yes.
I thought they started 7.
And you know what? Midnight Friday. I'm not setting my alarm for 12:01 a.m. So
But you can see when we submit that.
it's more, I will correct them on Sunday.
And you're gonna see the time at which we turn them.
I will see the time, but this is what I'm saying, that I reserve the right to set my alarm for 12:01 a.m., but I'm not going to, but I might, but I won't.
He could.
But Saturday morning, I'll awake eventually, have a little coffee, eat some candy from Halloween, and then I'll probably start attacking those bad boys. And if it's in before I start grading, which I reserve the right to start grading at 12:01 Saturday morning, then no penalty. That would be my recommendation, right? Take away the stress and just turn it in before then, okay? And Classroom is my preferred method, but you can also email it to me. If you want to give it to me physically, you got to get to be before Friday school ends, right? Okay, I'm done talking. Would anyone like it if I tried to get a porta potty?
Yeah.
Okay, I will try and. Yeah.
How do you end this thing?
Oh yes, will you do that?
They can see up my nose. End stream?
Yeah.
Adios, amigos.
And then hit done.
It's not ending. Oh, got it.
Hey.
End.